The dust cloud billowed behind the stagecoach as it rattled into Silverwater Creek on a scorching July afternoon in 1878. Zara Redmond pressed her face against the window, her green eyes taking in the frontier town that would become her new home. 22 years of living in Boston had not prepared her for the raw, untamed beauty of the Wyoming territory, nor for the sense of possibility that seemed to rise from the very earth itself. Last stop, Silverwater Creek. The driver called, bringing the horses to a halt in front of the town's only hotel. Zara gathered her belongings, smoothing down her blue traveling dress. She had come west to start anew after the death of her parents, answering an advertisement to teach at the newly established school. Independence beckoned like a siren's call, even as uncertainty gnawed at her confidence. The hotel lobby buzzed with activity when she entered. Men in dusty clothes gathered around small tables, playing cards and sharing stories. A few women in fine dresses stood near the counter, their laughter rising above the general din. "Miss Redmond?" A portly man with spectacles approached her. "I'm Mayor Hollister. We've been expecting you. Your room is ready and school begins in 3 days' time." "Thank you, Mayor. I'm eager to begin. There's a welcome gathering for you tomorrow evening at the town hall. The whole community is looking forward to meeting our new schoolteacher." After settling into her modest room, Zara unpacked her books and personal items. Boston seemed a lifetime away now. Here, she was no longer the daughter of respected merchants, but simply the new schoolteacher, a role she embraced with both excitement and trepidation. The next evening, Zara entered the town hall wearing her best dress, a deep burgundy creation that complemented her auburn hair. The building was alive with music and conversation. Women carried plates of food to long tables while men gathered in groups, discussing cattle prices and the railroad's impending arrival. Mayor Hollister introduced her to what seemed like every resident of Silverwater Creek. Names and faces blurred together until she found herself standing before a group of young women about her age. "Ladies, this is Miss Redmond, our new schoolteacher," the mayor announced before being pulled away to greet new arrivals. "Welcome to Silverwater," said a blonde woman in a yellow dress. "I'm Clara Jenkins. This is Mabel Thompson and Sarah Miller." The women exchanged pleasantries and Zara felt herself relaxing. Perhaps making friends wouldn't be as difficult as she'd feared. "You dance, Miss Redmond?" Mabel asked as the band struck up a lively tune. "Aye, that is to say." Zara hesitated, heat rising to her cheeks. "In Boston, I attended a few formal gatherings, but I'm afraid I never quite mastered the art." The three women exchanged glances. "Well, you simply must dance here," Sarah insisted. "Everyone does." Before Zara could protest, they had pulled her toward the dance floor where couples were already twirling to the music. Panic seized her as she realized she would be expected to participate. "I really don't think," she began, but her words were drowned out by the band. A tall man approached, his hat in hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Redmond?" Heart-pounding, Zara tried to decline, but Clara spoke first. "She'd be delighted, Mr. Peterson." The man extended his hand and Zara reluctantly took it. As soon as they began to move, disaster struck. Her feet seemed to develop minds of their own, stepping on her partner's boots and moving in opposition to the rhythm. "I'm so sorry," she gasped after the third time she trod on his toes. Mr. Peterson's smile grew strained. "Perhaps another time," he muttered, bowing slightly before retreating. Laughter erupted from a nearby group as Zara stood alone on the dance floor, mortification washing over her in waves. "Did you see that?" Someone whispered loudly enough for her to hear. "She moves like a newborn foal. How can anyone be so clumsy?" Another voice added. Fighting back tears, Zara turned to flee the dance floor when a strong hand caught her elbow. "Don't you mind them," said a deep voice. "They've forgotten their own first dances is all." Zara looked up into the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen. They belonged to a tall man with broad shoulders and sun-bronzed skin. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, and while his clothes were simple, a clean white shirt and black vest, they were well fitted to his muscular frame. "Rufus Quincey," he said, offering a slight bow. Town marshal and occasional dance instructor. Despite her embarrassment, Zara found herself smiling. Zara Redmond, new schoolteacher and confirmed dance disaster. His laugh was warm, genuine. "I've seen worse, believe me." He glanced around the room, noting the stares and whispers directed their way. "They laughed when you couldn't dance. That ain't right." He extended his hand. "I'll teach you slow. Nobody's watching." "Everyone's watching," she corrected, acutely aware of the eyes upon them, "not where we're going." He tilted his head toward the door. "Trust me." Against her better judgment, Zara nodded and allowed him to lead her outside. The night air was cool against her flushed skin as they walked to the side of the building where the music was still audible, but they were shielded from prying eyes. "Dancing's just walking with style," Rufus said, positioning himself in front of her. "May I?" When she nodded, he placed one hand lightly on her waist and took her right hand in his left. "Now, put your other hand on my shoulder." Zara did as instructed, trying to ignore the warmth that spread through her at his touch. "The basic step is simple. When I step forward with my left foot, you step back with your right. When I step to the side, you mirror me." Slowly, he guided her through the steps, counting softly. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. At first, Zara stared at her feet, concentrating so hard that her brow furrowed. "Look up," Rufus suggested gently. "Look at me, not your feet. Your body knows what to do." When she raised her eyes to his, something shifted. The tension in her shoulders eased, and suddenly the steps came more naturally. They moved together in the moonlight, the music from inside providing a distant soundtrack. "There you go," he encouraged as they completed a full turn without mishap. "You're dancing, Miss Redmond." His smile was infectious, and Zara found herself laughing with genuine delight. "I suppose I am, Marshal Quincey." They danced for several more minutes, Zara growing more confident with each passing moment. When the music finally ended, Rufus stepped back and bowed formally. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Redmond." "Thank you for the lesson, Marshal." "Rufus, please, and may I call you Zara?" She nodded, surprised by how right her name sounded on his lips. "I should return inside before they send a search party." "Of course." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" As they re-entered the town hall, Zara noticed several curious glances but held her head high. The evening continued pleasantly, with Rufus introducing her to more townspeople and staying near enough that she felt protected from further embarrassment. Later, as the gathering began to disperse, Rufus walked her back to the hotel. "The school is just past the church," he said. "I'd be happy to show you around town tomorrow if you'd like." "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose on your duties. Sunday's my day off. Besides, it's part of my job to ensure new residents feel welcome." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Meet me for breakfast. 8 o'clock at Maggie's diner." "I'd like that," Zara replied, surprised by her own eagerness. At the hotel entrance, he tipped his hat. "Good night, Zara Redmond. Welcome to Silverwater Creek." "Good night, Rufus Quincey, and thank you again for the dance lesson." As she prepared for bed that night, Zara found herself humming the tune they'd danced to, her body still remembering the feeling of his hand at her waist, guiding her through the steps. Perhaps Silverwater Creek would be more than just a fresh start. Perhaps it would be an adventure. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Zara dressed carefully in a pale blue dress with a matching ribbon in her hair. At precisely 8 o'clock, she entered Maggie's diner to find Rufus already seated at a corner table. He stood when he saw her, pulling out a chair. "Good morning." "I hope you slept well." "Better than expected," she admitted, taking the offered seat. "It's quieter here than Boston, though the mattress is somewhat less forgiving." Their conversation flowed easily over plates of eggs and bacon. Rufus told her about growing up on a cattle ranch outside of town before becoming marshal 3 years earlier. In turn, Zara shared stories of her life in Boston and her desire to make a difference as a teacher. "My parents believed education was the key to a better future," she explained. When they passed away last winter, I decided the best way to honor their memory was to bring that opportunity to children who might otherwise go without. That's admirable, Rufus said, his expression thoughtful. Not many young women would travel alone to the frontier. Not many had nothing left to stay for, she replied softly. Something in her tone must have touched him, for he reached across the table and briefly covered her hand with his. Their loss is our gain. After breakfast, they walked through town, Rufus pointing out important landmarks: the general store, the doctor's office, the blacksmith shop. The school was a simple one-room building with rows of wooden desks and a small teacher's desk at the front. "It's not much," Rufus apologized as he unlocked the door for her. "It's perfect," Zara breathed, running her fingers along the edge of the desk. "Just think of all the young minds that will be shaped within these walls." He watched her explore the room, a smile playing at his lips. "You're going to be wonderful with them." "I hope so." She turned to face him. "I admit I'm a bit nervous. I've never taught before, only tutored. The children here are eager to learn. Most of them haven't had proper schooling." He hesitated before adding, "Would you like to meet some of them?" The Parker family has 7 children, 5 of school age. They live just outside town. The Parker farm was modest but well maintained. Children of various ages ran to greet them as they approached, curious about the stranger accompanying the marshal, Mrs. Parker, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, welcomed them warmly. "The new schoolteacher, what a pleasure. Children, mind your manners now." The children lined up by age, introducing themselves solemnly before breaking into excited chatter about the upcoming school year. Zara answered their questions patiently, charmed by their enthusiasm. "Will you teach us dancing, Miss Redmond?" asked 8-year-old Emma Parker. "Ma says dancing is important for social graces." Before Zara could respond, Rufus interjected, "Miss Redmond is an excellent dancer. Perhaps once school is underway, she might consider a few lessons." Zara shot him a look of mingled amusement and disbelief, which he returned with a wink. As they rode back to town, Zara couldn't contain her laughter. "An excellent dancer? You, sir, are a terrible liar." "Not at all," he protested. "You were excellent by the end of our lesson. Besides, by the time school's in session for a few weeks, you'll have had plenty more practice." "Is that a promise of more lessons, Marshal, if you'd like?" His voice grew serious. "There's a social every Saturday night. Gives folks something to look forward to after a hard week's work. And you'll be there." She hadn't meant to sound so hopeful. "I will. Though I should warn you, I'm not always the most popular dance partner. Some folks don't care for the law looking over their shoulder while they're trying to enjoy themselves." "Their loss," she said, echoing his earlier sentiment. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Zara arranged her classroom, visited more families, and developed her teaching plan. Rufus checked on her regularly, often bringing small gifts, wildflowers picked on his rounds, a piece of ribbon for her hair, fresh apples from the tree behind his modest house. On Saturday night, true to his word, he arrived at her door to escort her to the social. This time, when the music started, Zara felt only a flutter of nervousness rather than the paralyzing fear of before. "Ready?" Rufus asked, offering his hand as the band struck up a waltz. Taking a deep breath, Zara nodded and allowed him to lead her onto the floor. Under his guidance, she moved with growing confidence, only occasionally missing a step. When the dance ended, she was flushed with success and the pleasure of his nearness. "You see," he said, his voice low, "you're a natural." Throughout the evening, Rufus claimed most of her dances, though he did encourage her to accept offers from other men in town. With each partner, her skill improved until by the end of the night, no one would have guessed she had ever struggled. As the social wound down, Clara Jenkins approached with a smile. "Well, Miss Redmond, it seems you've been holding out on us. You dance beautifully." "I had an excellent teacher," Zara replied, glancing at Rufus, who stood nearby engaged in conversation with the blacksmith. Clara followed her gaze, her smile turning knowing. "I see. Well, the marshal is certainly light on his feet for such a large man." He's been very kind, Zara said, attempting to sound casual. Just be careful, dear, Rufus Quincey has quite a history in these parts. Before Zara could ask what she meant, Clara had moved on to chat with other guests. The comment nagged at her as Rufus walked her home later that evening. "You're quiet," he observed as they strolled beneath the stars. "Just thinking about the school opening on Monday." It wasn't entirely a lie. 27 students, it's quite a responsibility. "You'll be magnificent," he assured her. "They're lucky to have you." At her door, he hesitated, and for a breathless moment, Zara thought he might kiss her. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently. "Good night, Zara, sleep well." "Good night, Rufus." Closing the door behind her, Zara leaned against it, her thoughts in turmoil. In just a week, this man had become important to her. Too important, perhaps. Clara's warning echoed in her mind, but she pushed it aside. Whatever Rufus's history might be, she would form her own opinions based on the man she was coming to know. Monday morning brought its own challenges, as Zara faced her classroom of eager faces for the first time. Children ranging from 6 to 16 filled the desks, some well-dressed, others in patched clothing, but all watching her with a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am Miss Redmond, and I will be your teacher. I believe that every one of you has the capacity to learn and grow, and together we will explore the wonders of reading, writing, mathematics, and much more." The day passed in a blur of assessments, introductions, and establishing routines. By the final bell, Zara was exhausted but exhilarated. As the children filed out, calling goodbyes and asking questions about tomorrow's lessons, she collapsed into her chair with a sigh of satisfaction. "Survived the first day, I see," came Rufus's voice from the doorway. Looking up, Zara found him leaning against the frame, hat in hand. "Indeed I did. Were you checking up on me, Marshal?" "Just doing my rounds." His casual tone was belied by the warmth in his eyes. "Thought you might want some company walking back to town." Their walks became a daily ritual. Each afternoon, Rufus would appear as the children departed, and they would stroll back to town together, discussing the day's events. Sometimes they would stop at the diner for coffee. Other times they would simply enjoy the lengthening shadows and each other's company. As September gave way to October, the air grew cooler, and Zara found herself looking forward to these moments more than anything else. She had made other friends in town. Clara and her circle had warmed to her after the social, and several mothers of her students often invited her for tea, but none brought her the same joy as Rufus's company. One crisp afternoon, as they walked along the creek that gave the town its name, Rufus suddenly stopped and turned to face her. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his expression serious. "Something about my past that you should know." Zara's heart skipped. Was this what Clara had hinted at? "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "Before I became marshal, I rode with a rough crowd. Nothing truly criminal, we were cowhands mostly, but we had a reputation for brawling and hard drinking." He paused, gauging her reaction. "When I was 22, I got into a fight with a man in the saloon. It got out of hand and I nearly killed him." Zara remained silent, waiting for him to continue. It was a wake-up call. "I realized I was headed down a path I didn't want to follow. The previous marshal, old Jim Wallace, he took me under his wing, straightened me out." His eyes held hers. "I've worked hard to become someone worthy of respect, but there are still those in town who remember the wild young man I was." "Is that why you became marshal? To prove yourself?" "Partly," he admitted, "but also because I believe people can change, can be better than their worst mistakes. I wanted to help others find that same second chance." Zara reached out and touched his arm. "Thank you for telling me this. You're not disturbed by the fact that you made mistakes as a young man and learned from them?" She shook her head. "That speaks to your character, not against it." Relief washed over his features, and he covered her hand with his own. "You're an extraordinary woman, Zara Redmond. And you're a good man, Rufus Quincey." She smiled up at him. "Now, shall we continue our walk? I've been promised that the sunset view from Silver Point Ridge is worth the climb." As autumn progressed, so did their relationship. They attended the harvest festival together, danced at every social, and spent Sundays riding through the countryside. Zara's confidence as a teacher grew alongside her feelings for Rufus, and she found herself imagining a future in Silverwater Creek that extended far beyond her initial one-year commitment. November brought the first snow, and with it, preparations for the Thanksgiving celebration. The town planned a communal feast in the meeting hall, and Zara threw herself into helping with the arrangements. Her students created decorations, and she herself promised to contribute several pies using her mother's recipes. The day before the celebration, Zara was putting the finishing touches on her apple pies when a knock sounded at her door. Wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron, she answered to find Rufus standing there, his expression uncharacteristically grave. "What is it?" she asked, immediately concerned. "Trouble at the Double B Ranch," he said. "A dispute over water rights has turned ugly. The foreman's been shot. How terrible! Is he alive but badly wounded? Doc Jensen's with him now." Rufus shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "I need to ride out there, see if I can prevent further violence." "Of course," Zara said, though dread settled in her stomach. "When will you leave?" "Now. I just wanted to tell you myself so you wouldn't worry when I didn't come to escort you to the celebration tomorrow." "How long will you be gone?" "A day or two, I hope. No more than that." He reached out to take her hand. "Save me a dance for when I return, always." The word held more meaning than she intended to reveal, but she couldn't take it back. Something in his eyes changed, softened. Before she could react, he'd pulled her into his arms and was kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart swell. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he confessed. "What took you so long?" she teased, though her voice trembled. His smile was rueful. "Wasn't sure you'd welcome it." "Well, now you know." She straightened his collar, reluctant to let him go. "Be careful, Rufus. Come back safely." "I will, I promise." He kissed her once more, quickly, before stepping back. "Keep an eye on the town for me." "Consider it done, Marshal." After he left, Zara returned to her baking, but her thoughts remained with Rufus as he rode into potential danger. The Double B Ranch was owned by Bartholomew Bennett, a notoriously difficult man who had feuded with neighboring ranchers for years over access to the creek that ran through his property. If shots had already been fired, the situation was volatile indeed. The Thanksgiving celebration the next day was a success despite Rufus's absence. Children ran between tables, adults shared stories and laughter, and for a few hours the town set aside its worries to give thanks for the year's blessings. Zara participated fully, though her eyes often strayed to the door, hoping to see Rufus's tall figure appear. By evening, with no word from him, her concern deepened. When Mayor Hollister approached her as the gathering wound down, his expression confirmed her fears. "Miss Redmond, might I have a word?" She followed him to a quiet corner. "What's happened?" "A rider just came in from the Double B. There's been more trouble. Seems Bennett caught one of the neighboring ranchers trying to divert water from the creek. Shots were exchanged." Zara's hand flew to her mouth. "Rufus?" He was there, trying to mediate. "The rider says he was hit but didn't know how bad." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. "I have to go to him." "It's 10 miles of rough country in the dark," the mayor protested. "Wait until morning." "I'll arrange." "I'm not waiting," Zara said with a determination that surprised even herself. "Can you tell me how to reach the ranch?" Recognizing the futility of arguing, the mayor provided directions and arranged for a horse to be saddled. Within 30 minutes, Zara was riding out of town, her heart pounding with fear and resolve. The journey was harrowing. Though the moon provided some light, the trail was unfamiliar, and twice she had to backtrack after taking wrong turns. The temperature dropped steadily, and by the time she spotted the lights of the Double B Ranch, her fingers were numb despite her gloves. The ranch house was ablaze with lamps when she arrived. A man hurried out to meet her as she dismounted, his expression wary until he recognized her. "Miss Redmond, the schoolteacher?" Yes, I've come about Marshal Quincey. Is he? She couldn't finish the question. He's inside. Doc Jensen's with him. The man, one of Bennett's hands, she presumed took the reins of her horse. Go on in. The interior of the ranch house was warm and well-appointed, with a large stone fireplace dominating the main room. Several men sat around a table, heads bent in conversation, while others stood near the fire. All eyes turned to her as she entered. Where is he? She asked, not bothering with pleasantries. A tall man with a silver beard, Bennett himself, she guessed, stood. In the back room, madam, but the doctor's working on him. Ignoring the implied suggestion to wait, Zara moved toward the hallway. Which door? Last on the left, someone called after her. She found the door and knocked softly before entering. The room was small but comfortable, with a bed, a chest of drawers, and a chair where Dr. Jensen sat, his sleeves rolled up and his hands bloody. On the bed lay Rufus, his face pale against the pillows. His shirt had been removed and a bandage wrapped his left shoulder and chest. His eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell steadily. Miss Redmond, Dr. Jensen said, rising, I didn't expect to see you here. How is he? She asked, moving to the bedside. The bullet went clean through his shoulder, missed anything vital, though he lost a fair amount of blood. He'll have a sore arm for a while, but he should recover fully with rest. Relief made her knees weak, and she sank onto the edge of the bed. Thank God. He's been asking for you, the doctor added with a knowing smile. Delirious from the pain at times, but your name was clear enough. As if on cue, Rufus stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. For a moment his gaze was unfocused, then it sharpened as it fell on Zara. You're here, he murmured. Or am I dreaming? I'm here, she confirmed, taking his hand carefully. Though your timing for getting shot is terrible, you missed my apple pie. A weak smile touched his lips. Save me a slice. I'll bake you an entire pie when we get home, she promised. Dr. Jensen cleared his throat. I'll give you two a moment, but then he needs rest. We should be able to move him back to town tomorrow if his fever doesn't worsen. After the doctor left, Zara gently brushed Rufus's hair back from his forehead. You scared me half to death. Sorry about that. His voice was rough but stronger than she'd expected. Didn't mean to get in the way of a bullet. What happened? Bennett and Miller were at each other's throats. I stepped between them just as Miller drew his gun. He winced as he shifted position. Not my brightest move. But very much in character, she said, squeezing his hand. Always the protector. It's my job. It's who you are. She leaned down to press a gentle kiss to his forehead. Rest now, I'll be here when you wake, and she was. Throughout the night, she dozed in the chair beside his bed, waking whenever he stirred to offer water or simply the comfort of her presence. By morning, his fever had broken, and Dr. Jensen declared him fit for transport back to town. The journey was slow and careful, with Rufus riding in Bennett's wagon, cushioned by blankets against the jolting of the rough road. Zara rode alongside, refusing to leave his side despite her exhaustion. Word of their return spread quickly, and by the time they reached Silverwater Creek, a small crowd had gathered. Rufus was carried to his home at the edge of town, where Mrs. Jensen, the doctor's wife, had prepared a comfortable sick room. You should go home, get some rest, Rufus told Zara as she helped him settle into his bed. You look exhausted. Charming as always, she retorted, though her smile took the sting from her words. I'll rest when I'm sure you're comfortable. I'm fine, truly. His expression grew serious. Thank you for coming for me. Where else would I be? The question was simple, but the answer that hung between them was anything but. Over the next week, as Rufus recuperated, Zara divided her time between teaching and caring for him. She brought meals, read to him when restlessness made him irritable, and changed his bandages under Dr. Jensen's instruction. The townspeople watched with approval and not a little gossip as the schoolteacher and marshal grew visibly closer through his recovery. By mid-December, Rufus was well enough to return to limited duty, though his arm remained in a sling. The town was transformed by holiday decorations, with evergreen boughs and red ribbons adorning storefronts and homes. Snow fell regularly, turning Silverwater Creek into a scene from a Christmas card. The school's holiday pageant was scheduled for December 22nd, the last day before the winter break. Zara had been rehearsing her students for weeks, teaching them carols and helping them memorize recitations. As the day approached, excitement reached fever pitch among the children. The evening of the pageant, the school was packed with parents and townspeople. Candles and oil lamps illuminated the room, creating a warm glow that matched the festive atmosphere. Zara moved among her students, adjusting costumes and calming nerves, her own stomach fluttering with anticipation. From the back of the room, Rufus watched her, his heart full. In the 4 months since Zara had arrived in Silverwater Creek, she had transformed not only the school but the entire community. Children who had never shown interest in learning now carried books home eagerly. Parents who had been skeptical of the need for education now boasted of their children's progress, and she had transformed him. Her belief in him, her acceptance of his past, her fierce loyalty all had made him want to be worthy of her. As he watched her kneel to straighten a young boy's collar, her face alight with pride and affection, Rufus knew with absolute certainty what he wanted for his future. The pageant was a resounding success. Children performed their parts with varying degrees of confidence, but universal enthusiasm. When the final carol ended, the audience erupted in applause and Zara stepped forward, beaming with pride. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. "These children have worked incredibly hard and your support means the world to them and to me." More applause followed as the children took their bows and then dispersed to find their families. Zara accepted congratulations from parents and friends, but her eyes kept searching for Rufus. She finally spotted him near the door, deep in conversation with Mayor Hollister. As the crowd thinned, he made his way to her side. "That was wonderful," he said, his eyes warm. "You've done amazing things with these children." "They did all the hard work," she demurred. "Don't sell yourself short, Miss Redmond." His formality was belied by the teasing light in his eyes. "You're quite the miracle worker." Before she could respond, a small voice interrupted them. "Miss Redmond, Marshal Quincey." Emma Parker tugged at Zara's skirt. "Ma says to ask if you're coming to the Christmas dance at the meeting hall. It's on Saturday night." Rufus glanced at Zara, one eyebrow raised in question. "What do you say, Miss Redmond? Care to accompany me to the dance?" "I'd be delighted, Marshal," she replied, a smile playing at her lips. "Though I hope your shoulder is healed enough for dancing. For you, I'll manage." Saturday night arrived clear and cold, stars sharp as diamonds in the black sky. Rufus collected Zara in a sleigh borrowed from the livery, the horse's breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Your chariot awaits," he said with a bow as she emerged from the hotel, resplendent in a deep green dress that brought out the color of her eyes. "Very gallant," she laughed, allowing him to help her into the sleigh and tuck blankets around her legs. The meeting hall glowed with light and warmth, evergreen garlands and red berries festooning the walls. A massive tree stood in one corner, decorated with paper chains, tin stars, and small candles. The band was already playing when they arrived and couples whirled around the floor in time to the music. "Ready to show off those dancing skills?" Rufus asked, offering his arm. "With you, always." Zara placed her hand in the crook of his elbow, marveling at how far she'd come since that first disastrous social. They danced for hours, moving together with the ease of long practice. Occasionally, they separated to dance with others, Rufus with some of the older ladies who had no partners, Zara with various men of the town, but they always found their way back to each other. As midnight approached, Rufus led her to a quiet corner near the Christmas tree. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small package from his pocket. "But Christmas isn't for 3 more days," she protested weakly, even as she accepted the gift. "Consider it an early present." His expression was a mixture of nervousness and anticipation that made her heart race. Carefully, she unwrapped the package to reveal a small wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl. "Rufus," she breathed, her eyes wide. He took her hand, his own not quite steady. "Zara Redmond, you came to Silverwater Creek and taught more than just children. You taught me that second chances are real, that the past doesn't define the future." He drew a deep breath. "I love you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and then she was in his arms, their kiss a promise and a celebration all at once. Around them, the party continued, but in that moment, they existed in a world of their own making. Word of their engagement spread through the town like wildfire. The next morning, as they walked to church together, they were met with congratulations and good wishes from everyone they passed. "Told you she was the one," Clara Jenkins said to Rufus with a knowing smile. "From the moment you taught her to dance." "You're just upset you didn't win the betting pool," Mabel Thompson teased her friend. "Betting pool?" Zara asked, raising an eyebrow. The women had the grace to look embarrassed. "Just a friendly wager on when you two would make it official," Clara admitted. "Half the town was in on it." "And who won?" Rufus asked, amusement coloring his voice. "Old Jim Wallace," Mabel said. "He said it would be at the Christmas dance, said Marshal Quincey was always a romantic at heart, though he tries to hide it." Rufus laughed, his arm tightening around Zara's waist. "Can't argue with that." They were married on New Year's Day, 1879, in the town church. Snow fell gently outside as they exchanged vows before friends who had become family. Zara wore a simple white dress with pearl buttons, her auburn hair crowned with a wreath of evergreen and white berries. Rufus, handsome in a new black suit, couldn't take his eyes off her throughout the ceremony. The celebration afterward lasted well into the night, with food, music, and dancing at the meeting hall. As midnight approached, Rufus led Zara to the center of the floor for a special waltz. "Remember our first dance lesson?" he asked as they moved together, their steps perfectly synchronized. "How could I forget?" They laughed when I couldn't dance. "And now look at you," pride shone in his eyes, "the most graceful woman in the territory." She smiled up at him, her heart full. "I had an excellent teacher, one who promised to teach me slow with nobody watching. Best promise I ever made," he said softly. "Except for the ones I made today." As the music swelled around them, Zara knew that their dance was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, joys and sorrows to face together, but in Rufus's arms, with the love of their community surrounding them, the future stretched before them like an open trail, full of promise. 5 years later, on a warm summer evening, Rufus stood in the doorway of their home at the edge of town, watching as Zara moved around their garden, 3-year-old James toddling after her while baby Sarah slept in a basket in the shade of the apple tree. The town had grown in those years. The railroad had finally arrived, bringing new residents and opportunities. Zara still taught at the school, now expanded to 2 rooms with the help of an assistant teacher, though she took time off after each child was born. Rufus himself had been elected sheriff of the county the previous year, a position of greater responsibility, but one that kept him closer to home most days. Life wasn't perfect. They had weathered storms, both literal and figurative, but it was rich and full in ways he had never imagined possible before Zara arrived on that stagecoach. She looked up, catching his eye, and smiled, that same radiant smile that had captured his heart from the beginning. Setting down her gardening tools, she scooped up James and made her way to where Rufus stood. "Dinner's almost ready," she said, leaning up to kiss his cheek. "Just waiting for the bread to finish baking. Smells wonderful." He took James from her arms, the boy's chubby hands immediately reaching for his father's badge. "How was your day?" "Good. The school committee approved my proposal for a lending library." Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Books for everyone in the community, not just the students." "That's wonderful, love." He wrapped his free arm around her waist. "Always changing the world one book at a time. Well, someone has to keep up with you, Sheriff Quincey." She leaned into his embrace. "Sarah's been sleeping all afternoon. She'll be up half the night." Then we'll be up together, he promised. Maybe we can practice our dancing. Zara laughed, the sound as joyful as it had been the first time she successfully completed a dance with him. Always the romantic. Only with you, he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Only ever with you. As they stood together on the porch of the home they had built, surrounded by the family they had created, Rufus thought back to that nervous young woman who couldn't dance, and the promise he had made her under the stars. Sometimes, he reflected, the greatest journeys began with the simplest steps, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a rhythm that could last a lifetime. And in Silverwater Creek, where the seasons changed but some things remained constant, Rufus and Zara Quincey continued their dance, teaching their children the steps that had brought them together, building a legacy of love that would endure long after the music faded.